Genevieve Xavier Meehan was born prematurely on the 18th of July 2021. She was adored by her parents and wider family. When she was 8 months old, her parents enrolled her to the Tiny Toes Nursery. Now, one of the employees in this nursery was Kate Roughley, and during the afternoon of May the 9th, 2022, Kate put Genevieve down to sleep on a beanbag. The child was face down, so her ability to move was severely restricted. Kate fastened the child into a harness, further restricting her ability to move. She placed a blanket over her, which at least partially covered her head. She left Genevieve in that position for over 90 minutes, during which her increasing distress was readily apparent both visibly and audibly. You see, the child could be seen desperately moving her lower body and heard crying and coughing, struggling to breathe. Due to the tears, the beanbag became damp and the child fell further into it. Wow, how much did she cry? And how are you crying that much? Nobody is attending to you. Genevieve became exhausted and overheated and rebreathed the increasingly oxygen-depleted air around her. And then, at 2:24 that day, Genevieve stopped breathing. But it wasn't until 3:10 where Kate raised the alarm, having discovered that the child was no longer breathing. Attempts were made to resuscitate her, but they did not succeed and she was pronounced dead at Stepping Hill Hospital at 4 p.m. Now, the cause of death was to have been a combination of asphyxia and stress imparted by an unsafe sleeping environment. In a nursery, safe sleeping practices required that a baby of Genevieve's age and developmental stage be placed to sleep on their back on a firm, flat surface, not a beanbag. Tiny Toes, the nursery, their own sleep policy at the time stated that the babies were to be placed on their backs to sleep, and that if a baby had rolled onto its tummy, it would be turned onto its back again, unless it was capable of rolling back to front and back again on its own. Now, at the time of the child's death, Kate was 35 years old and had acquired 17 years of experience in childcare, so she had no excuses for her negligent behavior. But it gets worse. Was this deliberate? You see, Kate claimed that the use of the beanbag as a bed had been common practice at the nursery, in part because the number of babies had exceeded the number of available cots. Kate also claimed she had placed Genevieve on her side rather than her front, that her swaddling and harnessing of her had not been so tight to have restricted her ability to move, and that the blanket had been one through which air could pass and not cover her head. Kate believed that her position as the head of the baby room had no additional responsibility beyond the ability to administer medicine, and that the ratio of staff to the children had been inadequate at the nursery, and that the senior management team never complained about the way in which she was treating the children, such as swaddling them and placing them on their side. You see, on that day, on May the 9th, there had been 2 cots available for Genevieve's use that afternoon. Now, whether or not the use of a beanbag as a bed had been commonplace at the nursery, placing a baby on one of them on their side or front was inherently dangerous. That danger could only gotten worse by swaddling and harnessing in such circumstances. Now, during the police investigation, it became apparent Kate considered Genevieve to have been a nuisance and an inconvenience. This is why I asked you earlier, was this deliberate? You see, Kate was spotted on CCTV getting very frustrated with the child. In one incident a few days before, on May the 6th, the CCTV footage showed that she can be heard telling the child, "Stop your whinging, Genevieve. Genevieve, go home." She was referring to Genevieve as stresshead and saying, "Genevieve, if you had any chance of being friends, you just blew it." On the morning of May the 9th, Kate berated her for having slept for only 20 minutes and she called her vile. Now, Kate claimed she was describing the child's cough as vile, but in reality, she was projecting what she thought of the child. On the morning of her death, Kate chanted, "Genevieve, go home. Guess who's having you tomorrow? It's not me, it's Becca." Becca is her colleague at work, but this was an indication she was happy she didn't have to deal with the child. So at 1:30 that afternoon, Kate told another colleague, "I'd rather just put her on the beanbag, I'm not wasting a cot." Genevieve was then placed on the beanbag. Kate checked on her around 2 p.m, but notwithstanding her kicking, wriggling, the arcing of her back and her tears, she left the child there. 10 minutes later, the child coughed for several seconds. Kate bent over and placed a blanket over her head. Over the next few minutes, the child continued to cry, she coughed and raised her legs. Her crying intensified and acquired a grunting tone. Her distressed body movements continued. Yet even then, Kate did not approach her, pick her up, or show any concern for her welfare. She left her to die. And the first point at which she approached the child was 30 to 40 minutes later, when Kate bent over but did not touch her for 1 second, telling a colleague, "I couldn't see her chest going up and down," as in she couldn't see if the child was breathing. She undertook a visual check, informing her colleague that she did not want to move Genevieve onto a cot. This is because if she did so, then the child would have been woken up and then she has to deal with attending to the child. She said to her colleague, "You don't go near a sleeping baby, do you?" Furthermore, a week before Genevieve's death, Kate posted a cryptic social media post. It said, "Sometimes I feel bad for not calling or checking up on people, but then I realize the phone works both ways and there's nobody checking up on me." To police, this may have been a mental state where she projected onto the child, "Well, if nobody cares for me, I'm not going to care for you." And it was pretty clear that Kate's interactions with Genevieve previously lacked any care, kindness, concern for her well-being. Dr. Garstang, the medical examiner, her characterization of Kate's approach was rough handling and demonstrated a lack of care or awareness of a baby's needs. Now, in the trial, the judge did acknowledge the lack of staff to children in the baby room, but that does not explain and cannot justify her own conduct. It did not bring about the circumstances in which Kate placed Genevieve to sleep. It did not preclude her from checking on the baby in an appropriate manner or with suitable frequency, and it did not compel her to leave the child in danger. I mean, how many times have you heard that before? A child is on a beanbag, they've cried so much that the tears pushed the bag or cushion or mattress or whatever down, made it so damp that the baby made an indent and the baby went down. I've never heard that before. It was also revealed in the trial that the last photograph of the child, which Genevieve's mother took the weekend before she died, was of a bright, happy and healthy baby, full of personality, grinning at the camera in her new swimming costume. In her first personal statement, Genevieve's mother describes how desperate she had been to have Genevieve in the first place, and the joy which she had experienced when Genevieve was born. She says that her love for Genevieve cannot be put into words and that nothing can reflect the horror of her death, or the life which she now lives, in which she feels Genevieve's absence every moment. Following her premature birth, through the care of clinicians and her parents, Genevieve had thrived. Her mother described how Genevieve's 6-year-old sister had become inseparable and how Genevieve would laugh and bounce with excitement when her sister came into the room. She spoke of her heartache when she looks at Genevieve's things and thinks of all the love, opportunities and life which she will never experience. She described her as having a beautiful soul, the image of her daddy and the light of their lives. She also noted that her older daughter wanted to say, at the time, "Every day I get punched with sadness. What this lady has done is terrible. Nobody should experience this. My younger sister should have the experience of having 2 older sisters, and I should have both of my sisters. This has changed my life forever." Genevieve's mother made a second statement. She said her and her partner have seen things which no parent should ever have to witness, and realized that Genevieve had suffered and had been frightened whilst fighting for her life, something which they had not previously appreciated. Genevieve's father described her as having been fun, passionate, mischievous, independent and full of life. He noted the many things which every parent longs to experience as a child grows up, but which he and her mother never will. He explained the pain and horror which he has gone through. He stated, "Kate's actions have shattered his heart and soul." Like Genevieve's mother, he said he will never forgive himself for having left Genevieve in Kate's care. Kate Roughley, the silly, lazy, ignorant cow, was sentenced to 14 years in prison. I mean, if you think about it, the baby drowned in its own tears. Is that stretching it? But that's what happened. All you had to do was go over to the baby, check the baby's okay. That's it. If not, then hold the baby. They're not that heavy. Kate wasn't depressed. Kate didn't have any mental issues. She was just a lazy cow. Comment, tell me what you think. On September the 12th, 2006, Gillian Ahmed was on her way to Walmart. She left her husband, the suspect, Mohammed Okif Ahmed, at her residence, which was an unlicensed daycare facility. One of the children in this facility was 20-month-old Miles Simon. Gillian first visited a friend before she went to Walmart, and her phone was bombarded with missed calls and messages from Mohammed asking her to get the hell home. When she got home, she found Miles. His eyes were rolled back and his lips were blue. Gillian told Mohammed, "Call the police," to which he replied, "No, can you just fix it?" You see, the definition of a muppet, according to Urban Dictionary, is a right useless fuckwit. Well, this brings us on to our suspect, Mohammed Okif Ahmed. You see, he fled the scene and he ran away. But before I tell you more of the story, here is Mohammed calling the police 3 days later, explaining his version of events.
We're concerned about you, man.
All right, well, let me get started.
Okay, well, where are you?
Let me say what I have to say first, and then we can discuss that.
Okay, go ahead.
All right. Jill kept asking me to watch the kids when she went to Walmart. Kept telling me that it's not my job, it's not my responsibility, I'm not getting paid for it. And I got on the laptop. A short while later, kids started fighting. My daughter was grabbing a toy from Sydney. Miles started crying. Sarah was eating dropped food off the floor. I picked Miles up, and he stank. So I changed his diaper. Sat back down, went to the backyard, maybe about minutes. There's some chairs in the backyard. I sat there about 5 minutes, called Jill. Came back in, and Miles was falling asleep on the couch. So Jill told me, "Don't let him fall asleep, just make him stand."
Now, where was Jill at this point?
She was at Walmart, so she said.
Oh, okay.
All right, and then got back on the laptop. A couple minutes later, Miles was just standing and he collapsed or fell, or I don't know.
Okay, he was standing. He was standing where?
He was standing. Right, not in front of the TV, but in front of the couch, facing the TV.
Okay, Mohammed, just so that I'm clear, because the cell phone keeps cutting in and out. You said he was standing on the couch, and then what happened?
He wasn't standing on the couch.
Okay.
He was standing on the carpet.
Okay, I'm sorry.
In front of me.
Okay.
So he collapsed. I picked him up, and he just seemed kind of dazed. He was perfectly fine. I picked him, put him back on the couch, got back on the laptop. So I picked him up to see if he was fine. He was fine. He just seemed like he was real tired, like dozing in and out. So I picked him up, put him in the playpen. A short while later, Jill walked in. I got back on the laptop again.
Okay.
Jill walked back in, and basically she went into the kitchen. I was like, "I think we should check on Miles, see if he's fine," you know? She went in there, and then she was like, "He's not breathing. You need to leave. You're not supposed to be here.
Okay.
I'm going to get locked up."
So if you go back to the incident, police in Alexandria, Virginia received a 911 call asking for assistance. When the police arrived at the residence, they found Miles Simon unresponsive. And this is where they met Gillian Ahmed. But before we get into the meat of the case, you should know that this isn't a high-profile mass news situation. Very few people are probably aware of the fact that this even happened, but we want to change that, letting you know the intricacies of the case and the details that might otherwise be missed. Not much has been released on Miles himself due to the fact that he was a minor at the time of his death, meaning a lot of his records have been sealed. What we do know is that Miles Simon was beaten to death in the middle of September in 2006. It was suspected that Mr. Ahmed was the culprit due to previous statements given about his treatment towards his wife, but let's start with some facts of Mr. Ahmed himself. From 1997 to 1999, records show that he was in contact with the juvenile court on several occasions. The offences in these court appearances were for crimes that were mostly unaggravated. They did not stop as the year turned to 2000. However, in 2001, Mr. Ahmed was charged with unlawful entry and then later in that same year, he was charged with 2 counts of destruction of property. Then again, in 2004, he was charged with having a fake driver's license. This was only made into an even bigger ordeal when he then failed to show up in court at all. As you see, he has a history of crime and none of it was violent. So far, based on his history, we can assume this guy was just a moron. But there was an aggressive streak in his life that came into play. He was reportedly aggressively jealous when it came to his wife, who ran a childcare facility. It was through this method that Mr. Ahmed and Miles were introduced. In late September, Miles was found dead. His injuries had been delivered through blunt force trauma. It was found that he and Mohammed had been seen together earlier in the day, although there were no witnesses around to see Miles' death, nor the direct events leading up to it. However, there were no other suspects for the crime. It was believed that only Mohammed could have been the culprit. He was arrested in 2006 in New York. Now, while the courts originally attempted to extradite him from the state, this was waived and he was transferred into Fairfax's protective custody while he awaited his time in court. He was locked down for 24 hours a day. While those in protective custody are offered a chance of recreational activities, Mohammed refused all of them. This could have been because he was simply that scared of what others would do to him. Perhaps being in prison was enough to make him lose his nerve, or maybe due to his insistent not guilty plea, it was his way of making a statement. The thing is, even among those in prison, there's a law, there's a code that you follow. If word got out that he was convicted of killing a child, he could have faced serious danger to his life in the prison. But what are your thoughts on protective custody within the prison system? I want to know if you think that certain criminals should be given an added layer of protection once they've been convicted. Let me know in the comments. Now, there's a lot more to uncover about this case, but let's have a look at Mohammed in a bit more detail. Now, Mohammed was married to Gillian Ahmed, but it was said they both had clinical depression, and it is believed that Gillian had other mental health illnesses as well, ones that resulted in occasional violent outbursts. Now, unfortunately, I was not able to get an exact diagnosis for what Gillian may have had, but we do have a letter from her that was sent to the judge presiding over her husband's case, which I'll be touching on later in this video. But despite these issues, they had been married for several years. In his younger years, Mohammed had been diagnosed with clinical depression. The doctors had suggested that he go on Prozac to help him manage the symptoms. As anyone suffering from depression can tell you, it's not easy to make it through your day-to-day without some amount of help or treatment. Unfortunately, Mohammed's mother did not believe in using prescription drugs and quickly decided that she would not be keeping her son on the medication. Perhaps that instinct stuck with him, because even after moving out of his mother's house and in with his wife, Mohammed never went back on any form of medication for his depression. But you have to understand what this actually means. Mohammed was a young man of Pakistani descent. I believe he moved to America when he was 3 years old. Well, I am of Pakistani descent and I grew up in the Western world. His depression, this is purely my own inference, there's no evidence backing this up, but it'd be my guess. His depression was that he wanted to marry Gillian, or he was in love with Gillian, who happened to be non-Pakistani and non-Muslim. A white girl, essentially. However, his parents didn't approve because she's not Pakistani and she's not Muslim. So, Mohammed fell into a depression thinking, I can't marry her, why is my life so bad, etc, etc. And eventually, his parents must have said, okay, I would rather you marry her than go on these drugs. That's probably what happened. Now, despite the fact that both of their illnesses went untreated, the two maintained a marriage with each other and even went on to have a daughter. Now, Mohammed was being tried with the supposed murder of Miles Simon, a juvenile whose autopsy reports that his death was most likely caused from being repeatedly into something, kicked, and even stamped on. But the problem here is that there were no witnesses to the crime. There's also plenty of room for the actions to have been reckless, but not meant to inflict great injury. Meaning that even if there was an altercation between the adult Muhammad and the child Miles, there is no proof that it had been meant to be particularly violent or meant to inflict that much harm on Miles. Now, the lack of eyewitnesses do make it hard to figure out what happened, but we do have this. On the 4th of August 2007, Gillian Ahmed wrote a letter and sent it to Judge Leslie M. Alden, who was heading the court case for her husband. In this letter, she speaks about the fact that she testified at his trial earlier that same year. Now, it should be noted that during her time testifying in the trial, she was not supportive of her husband and she was uninterested in supporting him. You see, in May 2007, Muhammad was found guilty and he was sentenced to 40 years. But one of the key witnesses was Gillian herself. The prosecutors used her against her husband, and during the trial, she said he was possessive, he was violent, he was aggressive, etc., etc. However, it came out later that a day before her testimony, she was found with a pound of weed and $1,600 in her pocket. Also, the defense also found out that Gillian approached Muhammad and she said, "If you want me to give you a favorable testimony, pay me $6,000. This was all recorded on a jail phone call. The defense argued the prosecutors knew of this and they did not disclose it. Now, while the letter starts out stating that she loves her husband greatly, she also did not think that her husband had anything to do with Miles' death. This is in direct contradiction with what she said at his trial previously. In fact, she even mentions what she said at the trial, stating that she stands by the fact that her husband was a jealous man, but he was not, in fact, a killer nor capable of this kind of violence. Least of all, violence against children. Even more bizarrely, the letter goes on to state specifically that she was not threatened or ordered to make such statements. Now, it's worth noting that a large part of her testifying in court previously was spent talking about how jealous her husband was. That he wasn't just jealous even, but that he was outright possessive. He did not like letting Gillian around other people, especially other men, and it was this statement that helped sway the jury's view of the man, no doubt. But in this letter, she seemed to go to great pains to try and clarify that she had both not been lying, but that she didn't believe that her husband's jealousy could result in him killing someone. Her basis for Muhammad being innocent in regards to Miles' death is that he let her run a childcare center. Listen to that statement again. Look at the way it's framed. He, Muhammad, let me, Gillian, run this center. As if she needed his approval. She needed him to say yes. As if like all the decisions in the household were made by him. Generally speaking, this isn't always bad, but when you look at someone who seems possessive and jealous, it seems like he wanted more control than she wanted him to have. This meant that his character was golden in her eyes, and that it meant while he was a jealous man, his jealousy would not get out of hand, and he was not enough to send him into any fits of violence, especially not in regards to the children themselves. The letter continued to explain that as far as Gillian was aware, her husband had never mistreated any of the children in their home. She expressed that she did not know how Miles could have gotten hurt, but that she fully believed her husband would never have been the one to commit the crime. Of course, this did not mean much considering the fact that Muhammad had already been convicted and sentenced. He had been fined and put into jail. So if her husband had already been sentenced, then what was the point in Jill writing this letter? She had wanted to ask him for leniency. If she had not been involved in his trial previously, this might have been a bit more believable. However, it cannot be disregarded that she testified against him earlier in the trial, and in her letter she claimed that during this testimony she was confused and stressed, and that because of this she may have implied something that she did not mean to imply. So look at that in a bit more detail. She's saying, "Oh judge, I may have made a mistake." Now, I'm not siding with Muhammad, not at all. What kind of mistake are you making that could put a man away for 40 years? Like, what the hell were you thinking? You understand what I'm saying, right? Clearly, she was regretting speaking out against her husband at the trial, and she was hoping that this letter might be something to help rectify that. At the trial, she had been willing to speak about how her husband's jealousy had previously affected other relationships that she had with her friends and companions. She had also mentioned how his jealousy could get out of hand, but in her letter, she was struggling to clarify that even if it did sometimes get out of hand, he had never been violent towards her or towards anyone else. You see, you have to understand the psychology of someone like Mohammed. I believe at the time he was around 20, 21, 22, give or take. Now, in the Northern Virginia area where there's a high population of Pakistanis, it's not a well-off area, but everyone has a nice life, right? If you're 21, 22, you're either in college or you're working a full-time job with some government agency. In the evenings, you're at some hookah bar or you're watching a movie with your friends, but you're out and about, you're doing stuff. Everybody in the Northern Virginia area knows everybody. It's very much a tight-knit community. Mohammed, though, he looked at himself and he thought, well, I gotta stay here and look after these damn kids while my friends are out chilling. I'm with this woman who makes me feel jealous and pisses me off. I think Mohammed was experiencing his ego being hurt. Him thinking to himself, well, why can't I go out and have fun? Why don't I have more money? Why do my friends have it? Why not me? An ego-centric predicament. Moving back to her letter, it went on to discuss how there had been no one around at the scene of the crime. To Gillian, this seemed to be enough to completely clear her husband of guilt. Gillian claimed that since there was no motive, no witness, and no indisputable evidence of guilt, that her husband should be allotted an amount of leniency. She claimed that without these things, the current sentence was unfair and that she was reaching out to the judge's better sense of kindness and compassion, hoping that she would see the error of his original judgment. Well, young lady, you're the reason why there was this error in the first place, supposedly. Any amount of leniency, she said, would be greatly appreciated and greatly understood. She did not specify what she wanted this leniency to be, but she did state that she would like to one day resume her marriage to Mohammed. Now, what do you think of that? Right, let me give you this scenario. Someone you know, your spouse, whoever, murders a child. Right, forget the circumstance, they murder a child. Do you think you could be with them again? Let's say they're sentenced to prison, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. Do you think, if ever they were released, you could ever be with them again? Comment, let me know. In the letter, Gillian also mentioned that her daughter needed to have her father around and involved in her life. Now, while you could argue that it's a good thing for a child to have both parents around, if Mohammed did in fact kill Miles, as the court believes that he did, then it's probably a good thing that he's not around to help raise his daughter. We might have ended up with even more convictions on our hands. Of course, these are speculations and thoughts made purely through reading up on the case. I did not know any of those involved with the case personally, and through the letter that Gillian sent to the judge, it's quite clear that she felt differently about her husband, differently enough that she was willing to write to the judge about it. Through these statements, it can be surmised that she was hoping to convince the judge to lower the amount of time that Mohammed needed to serve. She even claimed that if her husband was allowed out early, she knew that he would continue to spend positive energy to the world around her. Gillian was either convinced by someone, perhaps her husband himself, to write this letter, or she simply was so determined to get him out that she was willing to disregard previous behavior towards her and the fact that the jury had already looked at the case and deemed him guilty of the crime. So, as I mentioned earlier, Mohammed was initially found guilty and sentenced to 40 years, but because of Gillian's marijuana charge and because of her bribe, I guess, for $6,000 for good testimony, Mohammed was granted a new trial. Gillian herself was sentenced to 3 years for committing perjury. Mohammed eventually was sentenced to, I think, around 17 years. The reason why I think is because I went through the case file. Now, I don't know if many of you have seen case files, but normally they're 1, 2, 3 folders max. Sometimes there's an appeal, there'll be 4 folders. In the case of Mohammed, there was folders 1 to 17. Such was the extension of this case, but only 3 were available. So I looked at folder number 2, number 8, and like number 11. So I don't know exactly what his sentence was in the second trial. What I do know is that he is set to be released in 2025. And it seems to me that the jury decided that he may have committed the act, but it was the witness's testimony that really put him in it. So the question remains, is this the right sentence? If 17, 18 years, give or take, is that the right sentence? Why don't you guys comment? Tell me. Miles Simon is a name that many of us have never heard, but I hope through this video we can all remember his name and hope he rests peacefully.
Now, where was Miles at this point?
He was she pulled him out of the playpen and she put him on the floor in the bedroom.
Okay. How did he get into the playpen from the time that he collapsed on the floor?
I put him in there.
Oh, okay.
I called her and asked her what I should do. She said,
put him in the playpen?
Exactly.
Oh, okay. I mean, or in the crib. Crib or the playpen?
Whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
You make the words up, whatever you want to call them.
And that's the thing that's inside the bedroom?
Right.
Okay. And how long was he in there before Jill came home?
Maybe 2 minutes.
2 minutes, okay. So she came home pretty quickly after he fell over.
Don't quote me exactly. I wasn't looking at the time.
Oh, okay.
But it was a short while after that.
Okay.
She told me she was leaving Walmart and she was on her way to put him in the playpen.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Well,
and then she just told me to leave. I shouldn't be there. And then she was calling the ambulance. So I left.
Okay. All right. Now, why did she tell you to leave?
I don't know. You're going to have to ask her. She
Okay.
said she was going to get locked up. I wasn't supposed to be watching them.
You weren't supposed to be watching the kids?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. You can't even stay there to watch your own daughter?
No, she said I'm not. Well, previous conversation, she said that I'm not supposed to watch nobody else but her there.
Okay. All right. Well,
So,
Muhammad, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So if you want to meet with me, if you want to charge me, if you want to see me, I wouldn't feel comfortable. I told you what I told you. I told you the truth.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't meet with you without a lawyer. And,
I'm sorry, say that again?
I said I'm not willing to meet you without a lawyer.
Okay. All right. Well, you're not under arrest.
Well, I mean, your sister told me you guys banged down the door and acted like I did something.
No. This is the first time This is the first time I just came. Hold on, Muhammad.
My sister told me.
No, Muhammad. This is the first time we've come by your house. I'm sitting in the driveway of your mom's house.
My sister told me that you guys barged in without a search warrant or anything and entered her space.
Where is this
on
at?
the Beulah Street house.
When?
73 earlier today.
No, it wasn't me. First time I've been to the house is today. Just now.
Let me tell you why I don't feel comfortable meeting you guys.
Okay.
First of all, I'm in shock. This isn't registering.
Right.
Second of all, my sister told me you guys came in and told her, tried to interrogate her, and tried to find out where I was when I wasn't there, and told her you guys were going to call the CIA.
Oh, really?
I'm not gonna say you, someone, one of the officers.
No, it wasn't me. Wasn't me.
It wasn't you, I believe you.
Was it a street officer or was it a uniform officer?
I don't know. I didn't meet him. You're the first officer that called me. I've been waiting for you guys to call me.
Oh, okay. You there?
I want you to know I'm not running. If you want to meet me,
okay.
I will go see a lawyer. I will meet you.
Okay.
I do not feel comfortable meeting you without a lawyer. Honestly, this may sound cowardly, but I'm scared of the police. I don't know what you guys are capable of in your interrogations. If I tell you something and you reword it how you guys want to, or if you guys add something that I didn't say, or even try to set me up.
Well, let me ask you this, Muhammad. You said that what time did your wife leave?
I don't know any times or any further questions.
Okay.
I called you. I told you everything I knew.
Okay.
So that's what I recorded, and that's what I documented. Anything else, if you want me to meet you, let me know now so I can contact the lawyer and meet you.
Well, we still need to sit.
If you meet me right now, then let me know.
I'm sorry, say what now? Say that again.
If you don't need to see me tonight, if you don't need to meet me tonight, tomorrow, next week, whenever.
No, we need to talk.
My number?
We need to talk in person tonight because, like I said before, the phone keeps cutting out. So it's hard to understand what you're saying. I'm only getting bits and pieces of it, and it might be because of these Nextels that we have, which are terrible. So, I would like to meet with you, but, you do what you think is best to do.
So you don't mind if I bring a lawyer when I meet you?
No, I don't care. If you got Muhammad, if you got nothing to hide, then you'll talk to me. You'll tell me what happened. If I had something to hide, I wouldn't have called you. I know cell phones are traceable by the closest tower. I know you can track me down. You know what I mean? I'm not stupid. All I'm saying is, I'm innocent. Please don't set me up. I didn't harm any kids. I don't understand what's going on. Well, you don't understand why Miles is dead.
I don't know if he's dead or not. I don't know.
He's dead. He has died.
Why is he dead? What happened to him?
Well, they have to do an autopsy first to find out, but he died, and you were the last person to be with him.
Okay, so that's why you need to see me.
Yeah, I would like to find out, what happened. And you told me a little bit that has broken in and out while we're talking on the cell phone. And what I was able to sort of hear, and correct me if I'm wrong in anything that I'm saying, is that Jillian left to go to Walmart. And you were watching all, was it 3 children or 2?
It was, let me think.
Well, it was your daughter. Your daughter.
My daughter, Sydney, Miles, and Sarah. 4.
So 4 kids. And sometime during this whole time that you're watching the kids, how long was Jill gone for? Would you estimate?
Honestly, I can't tell you an exact time because I don't know the exact time. If I tell you an exact time, then later you're going to call me a liar.
No, I'm not going to call you a liar. You estimate the best of how long she was gone. But at
maybe between 15 and 20 minutes.
Okay.
Not long.
Why would she get in trouble?
I don't know why she would say that.
That doesn't make sense. You live there. You can come and live there. Have you ever watched the kids before?
Yeah, I've watched the kids many times before.
Right, and you're watching those kids, and you're also watching your own child. You have a right to be in your own home.
Usually, there's maybe 5 or 6 kids.
There you go.
More.
But the thing is, you're in your own home. You have a right. Why would you get in trouble for watching your own kid?
It's not why I would get in trouble. Because I know I didn't do anything wrong.
So why would you take off, though? That's the thing that kind of confused us.
Jill's called the police on me before.
What for?
And told them I've done stuff that I didn't do.
Oh, okay.
Like pushed her and then...
You never pushed her?
I'm going to get... No, I never pushed her, I promise you.
Never? You've never pushed her at all?
She's actually the one that's abused me before.
Really?
But I know you don't give a shit about that. I know
Dude,
it doesn't matter. I know you're not going to believe me.
Look, this is a bad... Muhammad, I've never met you. This is a bad situation. Believe it or not, I do care.
The bad situation is that I feel, I'm not going to say it's a fact, that my name is Muhammad, and I am a minority.
So am I. So what?
And I cannot register this, man. This is not making any sense. This isn't making any sense.
No,
man.
it's not, and that's why I want to sit down and talk to you so we can try to make some sense out of it. But hiding and
you
not.
You guys want to break down the door and the ground and handcuffs.
No one wants to do that. I tell you what, I'll promise you this: if you come and meet me somewhere,
you're not going to without an attorney. I promise you.
You're not going to be handcuffed and thrown down on the ground. Okay, I promise you that. That's the best promise I can give you, man. Okay. You say you're a minority. I'm a minority too.
Okay, so then you know how I feel.
I do. Absolutely.
You've never been in this situation. No. You don't know how I feel.
No, I'd be lying to you. I'd be lying to you if I said I have been in this situation. No, I haven't.
No, any other situation for me to feel this way.
I actually have been accused of something that I didn't do, so I know what it feels like. Twice.
Okay, I'm just scared. I feel like if I come with a lawyer, that anything you say will not be turned around.
I'm not telling you. I'm not giving you any legal advice. I'm just saying I need to talk to you. Okay? I can't make you come and tell me your story in person. That's up to you. It's what's in your Muhammad. It's in your heart, man. What you feel is right. You have heart. I mean, you wouldn't be calling me. You wouldn't be calling me if you didn't feel bad about what happened. I know you feel bad because you want to tell me what happened. But to tell me what happened, Muhammad, means you got to come forward. You got to come a little bit further.
I'm actually angry that I'm in this situation.
No, you feel bad about what happened. You do.
No, I'm angry about being in this situation. I don't feel bad because I didn't do anything.
You're not a mean-hearted person, and I don't think you did anything wrong. But the longer you stay out, the longer you not come forward, the worse it looks.
I'm not running. You're not understanding me.
Mm-hmm.
You need you with an attorney.
Okay.
For all I know.
Well, where are you going to stay at tonight? What are you going to do? You're going to stay out and about? I mean, what are you going to do, man?
I'll probably stay with my a relative or something.
Okay.
If you can wait until tomorrow morning.
It's not up to me what to do. I'm not the lead detective. All right. Okay.
I mean, if you're charging me with something, let me know.
Okay.
If the lead detective wants to charge me with something, let me know.
Mm-hmm. I'll